encouraging people to take careers in education research. So I'm glad we have this panel and look forward to the discussion. Few things. One is I will post a link. So I hope this discussion today is a first step in forming a community around higher education helping students. So this is not the only meeting we have, but there are many more interactions, answering of questions. So what I'd like to do is get your contact information so we can be connected through either Google Groups or other social media platforms, so that we continue this discussion even after this. And the second request I have is if you are comfortable, please unmute. I mean, show your. I would like to see your beautiful faces, and look forward to the discussion. Thanks, Vatsal, for putting this together.
Thank you, Dr. Panisar. So I just realized that I hit the record button a bit late, but I hope that would be all right. So yeah, okay. So I would welcome. I welcome you all, and let me share my screen so that yeah, I can now. So, okay, so I guess you see my screen now. So today's seminar is a two-step process. So it's divided into two parts. The part one is when I will be talking about research in general. So I will introduce what I mean by research. What do we do as researchers and so on. And I will also share some of my personal experiences with you all. And I'm hoping that would take around 10 to 15 minutes. So I will try to keep it as short as possible. And then after that, the main event for tonight would be listening to the panelists. So we have gathered a wide range of panelists with us today, and then we will listen to their views and their opinions and their experiences on this topic. Yeah. Okay. Now you should see the presentation. Okay. Good. So let me start. So what is research? So essentially, if you think about whatever human knowledge we have gathered so far, right? So just imagine that you have a knowledge, like we as like mankind, we have gathered some knowledge. And what as a researcher, what we try to do is try to push the boundaries of that knowledge. So, for example, you could think about doing some like bringing in new knowledge or bringing in new things into our understanding. For example, understanding different forces that govern the nature and so on. So that's, let's say, one specific part of what I mean by research. Another thing that could also happen is that you could also use some existing knowledge to come up with innovative solutions to existing problems as well. So that also comes under the purview of research. And instead of talking about what is research, I think what is more important to know is who are researchers, or like what are the pillars of a scientific approach, or what do I mean by when I say, okay, someone is a researcher. Right. And this slide is essentially inspired by a recent conversation that I had with a high school student. And I guess he might be in the audience as well. His name is Rikhil. And he asked me a question that how do I even know that I'm good enough to be a researcher? And for that, essentially, the main, let's say, pillar of this someone being a researcher is curiosity. Right. And to be honest, like if you think about it, all of us are born curious. I mean, a newly born baby is always curious. I mean, as we grow old, we're always curious about different things, and we want to understand what is going on around us. And that's essentially the key, let's say, feature or a key, like a pillar of a researcher that every one of us should have. Another thing that is important is to question everything. So whenever you think about any particular problem, you should always try to question everything that you hear about it. For example, if Einstein might not have questioned Newton's law of gravitation, right, then we might not have improved. He might not have improved upon it. And that's a big. That's one of the biggest stories that we know. But of course, this happens every day in the field of research and scientific curiosity. Whenever you think about changing something, and you should always try to question everything that exists. And that means that while you are in let's say when you are studying something from a textbook, or when your professor is giving you a course, whenever they are teaching you something, should always try to rationalize things on your own. And that's essentially what we mean by pursuing research. And in fact, it's not just it's not just a like a job. It's also a lifestyle. And there's a very nice article by George Bassler, who is one of the who was one of the leading fluid dynamicists of his time. And he has written this very nice article, which I urge every one of you to read as you go on after this seminar. One question that is always asked, or which I saw like many of you asked also using the Google form, and also when I talk to people, I mean, this question always comes up, is what is the difference between academic versus industrial research? Or I can also say, okay, we talked about what is research. So research is the art of, let's say, coming up with new information, or pushing the limits of human knowledge. But what are the different types of research? And I picked two over here. So I say industrial research and academic research. But the thing is, they are not very different. So there are no sharp lines between them. Essentially, they are two different sides of the same coin. And so, for example, if I talk about it, academic research, and you might have seen this example. So now, for this particular part of the let's say my talk, I would take examples from my own research work, because that's something which I know the most. So you might have seen this many times in your house. So essentially, when you try to fill a bowl of something, like you try to fill this glass with water coming from tap, you always see these bubbles inside your glass, right? And so one might ask, okay, why are these bubbles being formed? So that's a question, that's a curiosity driven question that one might ask. And if you try to answer this question, so that's something that we often refer to as academic research. So we are trying to understand something that we see around us, and using let's say knowledge that we already have from the past, and trying to come up with new ideas about why this is happening. At the same time, if you go and talk to someone who is in industry, they might tell you that, okay, this thing looks very interesting, and this might be useful for wastewater treatment. Or for example, if some of my chemical engineering colleagues are here, they might see this as a very nice setup to enhance the reaction rate between two fluids. For example, instead of air, you might have some other gas. And if you want to increase the surface area of reaction, this process might be very interesting for that. So you see, the question still remains the same. So what you have is a single underlying question, which is how are these bubbles entrained? But this can have applications in both academics, which is a purely curiosity-driven pursuit, as well as in industrial industries as well. And in fact, these two fields, I mean, there is a symbiosis between academics and industry. And for that, I would like to share a very interesting story with you, which is also very close to me. Okay, before I go there, in fact, this was a question which was asked in the Google form, like which is like to essentially the question was something along the lines of what is the difference between academic research and industrial research? And there were like a few parts, like it was a multi-part question. And when I read that question, I think whoever asked that question, I mean, if you are in the audience, I must say that you have a researcher's mind, because what the question that you're trying to ask right now is something that we all that we have been discussing a lot in our field for quite a while. And in fact, I was recently in another panel discussion, which was on which we called as future of fluid dynamics. But actually, what we discussed over there was the symbiosis between academics and industrial research. So I will also put that link after the seminar. And you can also head over there to know more about this symbiosis. But I will take one example from that discussion, and this is the example that you see here. So before coming to this example, I need to give you some background. So there is a very big company called Canon, and they do a lot of things. Along with those things, they also make printers. So they make inkjet printers. And when I say this inkjet printer, these are not the printers that you find around in your houses, on your office desk or so on. So these are industry grade printers, which you would find in industries, and where essentially you have to. So if, for example, if you want to print a book, right? So you would enter like a sheet of papers through one side. On the other side, you would get a book printed out of it. And they use this technology called inkjet printing. And as you can see from the name, inkjet, essentially what you try to do is that you jet these inks. So you have this ink. So there is a print head which is not shown in this figure, and that print head essentially jets, like make the jets of these inks which come out, and then they break into droplets over here, and then these droplets will go on your paper, and then you will print things on that paper. And so this is a very nice looking image. In fact, this was awarded the image of the year by Nature in this article over here. You can also have a look there. And this image was taken by someone who was doing a combined PhD with the company. And the reason why this collaboration started was that the inkjet printers had a problem. So what was the problem? So what they saw was that if so these jets, as long as they are uniform, as long as they are smooth enough like this, it's all well and good. But sometimes, like all out of, like, let's say stochastically, if you may, they would stop printing. So instead of getting a single jet like this, they would just make a spray sometimes, or just not. So the process was not repeatable enough. And they had this problem for quite a long time. And they in fact figured out, they also figured out how to solve that problem. So what they figured out was, like, if you stop the printer for some time, then the problem goes away. So you have a printer all working well and good. Sometimes it happens that the printer is not working properly, and then you stop the printer, and then after some time it starts working again. And they actually funnily called it as the Microsoft method. So you essentially shut down your system, boot it up back again, and it starts working. So they knew how to solve it. And in fact, if at that point there must have been someone who is doing industrial engineering, so someone like Akash Deep, who is in our panel today, and they came up with a scheduling algorithm. In that, what they did was, they, instead of having one printhead, they had multiple printheads, and then they could just switch off some of the printheads which were making problems, and then they would continue printing other than that. But that did not solve their problem. And then they came to us, and then they wanted to understand why this is happening. And the reason it happens is essentially because sometimes, out of sheer luck, you might get some particles that might go inside the printhead, and then that could create bubbles. So it would nucleate bubbles. And anyone who has done cooking and who has cooked rice without pressure cooker would know that that particles can act as nucleation sites for bubbles, and that bubbles essentially used to cause these all problems. So you see, so industry had a problem, and they came to us, and then we tried solving it. And in fact, there are now many more PhD students who are working on this project, and there are many theses which came out of this project. So there is a strong industrial collaboration in any field you go. So I'm giving you fluid mechanics examples, but actually this is something which is common in almost every field. Now I come to this process. So now I hope I have encouraged you to think about research, and I have told you about a few things that we do in collaboration with industry and so on. But now when it comes to the application process, so what is really important is to know your fields. For example, from the very beginning, I knew that I wanted to do a PhD in fluid mechanics. For some of you, it might not be as straightforward as that. And today we have like in our panelists, we will try to also come up with an answer to this question as well. So you need to know your field. So you need to try out, and you need to be confident about what you want to do. Once you are there, then you need to know more about the people in your field. So before you consider, let's say, doing research or doing a PhD, what you need to know is to know more about who are the who's and who of your field. And for that, you can do something which we call as academic stalking. So stalking gives it a bad connotation, but essentially simply means that you would try to know more about the particular field. So, and for that, what you can do is you can use things like Google Scholar or Archive to know more about the papers or the work that is current right now in the field. For example, if it's machine learning, you can go to Google Scholar, search on machine learning, and then you can get a list of many papers. You can go on archive, for example, and you can also find papers over there. In fact, there is also something that I want to tell you about archive over here, is that nowadays there is a push in the community to publish more and more open access papers, which essentially means that the papers are not hidden behind paywalls. But that is not true for all the papers that you see. And in principle, what every research group has tried to do in the past few decades is to put all their papers as a preprint version on archive. All right. And so if you want to know about your field, or if you want to know about a particular research group, you can always go there, and you can always go and look at what are the kinds of things that has been published. Because in PhD or in research, what is really important is the person with whom you're doing your PhD, or the group in which you're doing your PhD. And you should and this provides you a very nice platform to essentially do that and essentially know more about both of these things. At the same time, there's also something called OrcID nowadays, which is essentially like a common platform for indexing all the researchers, and you can also have a look there. Other than that, there is also something called a ResearchGate, which is essentially Facebook for researchers, or if you may, like LinkedIn for researchers as well. So there are many people who are also on LinkedIn, and I see it also has a very huge user base, mainly for people who are in industries, right? But if you want to know about professors and if you want to know about academicians, LinkedIn might not be the best place to look at. The main reason being, in research or in academia, the number of publications is our currency, right? And LinkedIn does not automatically indexes papers, but ResearchGate does that. So most of the professors that you might come across, they might be more active on ResearchGate and not on other platforms. So that's also something that you can use to essentially instead of saying stalking, you can say investigate their work. Of course, there is also Twitter, which nowadays we use to essentially reach out to the to the common audience, and there are many people who are also very active there. And if nothing works, you can also just do the plain old Google search as well. Apart from these, what you can also think about is individual groups websites. For example, this is our group's website, which is Physics of Fluids. So as you might have noticed by now that my research interest is physics of fluids, and here you can, if you go there, then you can see that, okay, I don't think that my cursor is visible, but okay, I hope that you can see that there are multiple tabs, and you have this home, people, research, education, publication, and so on. So you can also know more and more about that particular group by going to this website. And what is also important, particularly in academia, is to make contacts and to network, right? Because imagine, like, if you're a professor somewhere, and so you might be getting many emails for like people requesting to get a PhD position over there, and the professor might not look at all the emails. But what you can always do is go to these websites, go to this people over there, and then you can always find graduate students, and you can write emails to them. So we have this joke going around in academics that as you grow older in experience, the frequency of replying to emails goes down. So if you're a graduate student, you try to reply to as many emails as possible. You can always go there. Another thing that you can do is you can leverage the IIT Roorkee alumni group, right? Because if you go to whichever group you go, you might always find someone from Roorkee or somewhere else, like from IIT, who is doing like a PhD thesis in that group, and you can always go and contact them as well. And this is something which Dheeraj mentioned to me a while ago, that people from, let's say, IIT Madras or IIT Bombay, they have a very strong alumni support for applying to these the PhD programs. But somehow at IIT Roorkee, we still lag this a bit. And the way we can rectify this is essentially that when you are applying to PhDs, you can always reach out to us, and you can always ask us for help, and we can always help you also connect with people essentially if you are interested. So apart from these two, of course, the third step, which is the application process itself. And so this I would not talk about. I hope that some of the panelists would comment on this in a minute. And the reason that we don't go in detail of this particular thing is because this is very specific to the program. It is very specific to where you like to whom you're applying to the group, to the program, and so on. But we can always have this discussion further in the coming days, and you can always reach out to me, for example, and we can always have a discussion other than that. And of course, if all goes well, then you essentially get a PhD application through, and then you become happy. Okay, so I will just this is my last slide essentially. So I will also prepare like a list of further readings. Another thing that you can do for, let's say, academic stalking is to also read biographies of old researchers. For example, Feynman or Einstein or Leonardo da Vinci or like someone who is very famous right now is Jennifer Doudna, who is doing great work in gene editing and so on. So you can always read old like biographies, and like also there is a professor from Carnegie Mellon who has written a very nice biography on which is called The Last Lecture. So there are many resources available out there, and depending on your field of interest, you can always go and look it up and try and understand that. And whatever I've said today, I actually took most of my, let's say, anecdotes from this book, which is a field guide to grad school, which is a very nice book, which anyone who's interested in doing a PhD should read this book. This book only came out in 2020, and I wish I had read this book while I was applying to PhD as well. So that's a very nice book to have. So with that, let me, without any further delay, let's head out to our panel. And so essentially, we have a group of 5 panelists, and I will moderate the panel. And so if you have any questions to me, to the panelist, or so on, I also request you to put them in the chat box. So I will be monitoring that as a moderator. I will also monitor the chat box which is over here. So if you have any questions, any pressing issue, just put it out there, and then we can also take it up during our panel discussion. So now, instead of introducing all the panelists, what I ask is going alphabetically, that each panelist would unmute themselves and just introduce yourself and try to say a specific thing which is not included in this bio that I have put on the screen right now. For example, I can go first. So I'm Vatsal Sanjay, and I'm very interested and very passionate about openness in science, and to make science inclusive for all, as you might have already guessed with my discussion on open research and open access and so on. So now, Akash, maybe you can introduce yourself now.
Oh, awesome. Thank you everyone. First of all, Vatsal, Dr. Panesar for organizing this and having me here. It's great to be here. My name's Akash. I graduated in 2017, so it's been 4 years after spending 4 years in Roorkee. And right after my stay in Roorkee, I moved to Wisconsin. So right now I'm a PhD student here, and my research interests pertain to something like, you can just call it industrial analytics. So it's basically we try to assimilate stuff from statistics, computer science, and try to solve problems within the industrial domains or operations domain. It's pretty fun. And on that note, I think as Vatsal asked to say something which is not here, probably what I would say is that, all of you guys are already here. You guys are part of this great institute, Roorkee Ireland. It's one place, and because you're already there, so you can always do research if that interests you. What I want to just say is that during that process, never stop having fun. Enjoy the process, and it's very, very rewarding. And I hope you find success.
Okay, Ananya.
Hi everyone, this is Ananya, and you can read my intro, but I am quite passionate about research at the interface of physics, my physics being material science and nanotechnology and biology, and I am quite passionate about scientific stories also. In case you want, you can just ask a question later, we can discuss that. Yeah, that's all.
Okay, Anshika.
Hi everyone, I'm Anshika. I did my bachelor's in biotechnology, and I'm very fascinated and curious about the fundamental process of life, like how things work inside cell. And yeah, you can read my intro here. I am doing my PhD in nano vaccines right now, like the Pfizer Moderna vaccine you have heard recently. Yeah.
All right. So the most relevant of us all probably here. Okay, Dheeraj.
Hello everyone, my name is Dheeraj Jindana and I did my bachelor's in mechanical engineering. So after I got into Stanford, I rotated in a few different labs, I worked in a few different labs and I really got interested in physics. And it turns out I had to do a lot of reading and I really went deep into cell biology work. And right now I'm using stem cells to understand human embryogenesis better.
Okay, Rahul.
Hello everyone. So I'm Rahul Jain. I graduated with integrated master's in physics from IIT Roorkee, after which I moved to Michigan State University to do my PhD in nuclear physics. During second year of my program, I also applied for the dual PhD program because I was also interested in the computational engineering aspect of things that I was doing. So we can talk more about how this works. One thing that I'm passionate about is researching in the field of nuclear astrophysics, which is on the border of astro and nuclear physics. And I'm also a student member for the International Nuclear Astrophysics Research Network, which basically brings together different astronomical observatories and nuclear physics lab facilities to work together on the open question nuclear astrophysics.
Okay, that's quite cool. And also, Rahul is pursuing a dual PhD in nuclear physics and computational mathematics. So that's also quite good. And we will also talk about what it means in a minute. So apart from the panelists, we also have Professor Arup Kumar Das with us on this call, and he's a faculty member in the Department of Mechanical and Industrial Engineering. He's one of my closest collaborators and has been a very kind mentor to me over the past 6 to 7 years. And he has graciously agreed to be a passive member in the panel. In fact, it was his choice that he wanted to be a silent member so that he could see and he could try to get some takeaways from our discussion and try to make research a passion at IIT Roorkee in the coming few years. Okay, so with that, we should head out to our panel. So the first, so as I said, you can always put your questions on the chat as well, and we received quite a few of these questions on through Google Form. So I will start with more of a generic question to the panelists. So what was so this question? Okay, Akash can answer probably from the beginning. So what was your first research experience, or if I may, like how were you introduced to research, and what happened after that? So I ask you not to go too much in detail about your particular research, but more about the experience that surrounded that research experience.
Yeah, a very interesting question. I think I'm not sure about the demographics of the audience right now. I'm not sure if you're like, say, second year or third year students, or maybe in your final year students, first year master, but this always intriguing probably to all that, okay, after landing into the R land after 1 year, probably what do you want to do? And I don't know, like probably I'm just making a wild guess here, like most of you, I just spent my first year of Roorkee watching lots of TV series, having this fun of DC++, and you watch a lot of shows and movies. But after that, there was this thing that, okay, what to do next? And at that point of time, I was doing some courses related to fluids and thermodynamics, and had a very nice chance to actually associate with Professor Das, who's also here. And I remember, like, just walking super hesitantly, like, into his office that, hey, I'm probably liking this area, but do you think that I can do something? And well, basically that 5 minutes of courage is how my venture into research started. He was very kind enough to have me, introduce me with some of the literature, some of the things that I can possibly do. I was like, kind of good with, say, something computational stuff. So I started with computational fluid dynamics. And we spent some really good time, got a couple of publications out of it during my undergrad years. But, within a year, I realized that it was not really my calling, that I was a fluids guy. I did not identify myself as a fluids guy. So no offense, Vatsal, no offense, Professor Das. But I just had my heart somewhere else. And so gradually I moved to industrial engineering, which is also my major. And I, applied mathematics also, it was more liking to me. And within a year, I made a strong transition. And during that period, I think that's what's important that you guys can take away is that I did a lot of reading by myself, uh, like the sources that Vatsal had already earlier mentioned. You just go from the library, you have access to tons of resources. So just keep reading. Nothing will make sense at the beginning, but gradually over a period of a week, a month, or a semester, something will start to form in your head. There will be a canvas that will be painted gradually, and if from that you can probably start to find, okay, what interests me. And that's how probably by the end of third year I realized that, okay, I could do some industrial optimization kind of stuff, and that's how I ended up pursuing a graduate school here. I hope that answers the question.
So that also tells you that that you can also essentially switch while you are doing undergrad research. So that also brings up a very nice question which I want to put it to, let's say, the panel in general, which is what do you feel about the undergraduate research in IIT Roorkee in general? And as Akash also pointed out, a very nice thing about switching and rotating research interests. So what do you think about that? Maybe Dheeraj, you can go first, and then others can chime in.
Right. So I think undergrad research is very useful. Just for one, you can actually test your interests, right? You might be interested in one field, but unless you do work in that field and work with a professor who is actively researching that field, you can't really tell if you're good at it and also if you enjoy it. So once you get that out of the way, try different other areas of interest while you're still in undergrad at Roorkee. And in case there's no lab which does the research in that particular field, you can always choose to do internships in some other universities like IISc. That's something I did, where there are people working in that area, and try out what you like and what you're good at. And that's also a very nice story to tell in your application process for PhD admissions. And it'll add a lot of value to application if you have those experiences in your undergrad. Publications are always a hit or a miss. I mean, if the work ends up being qualified for a publication, you'll end up with a publication, and that's awesome. But in case you don't end up having papers during undergrad, that's fine as well. The experience matters. So yeah, I think trying out different things is very important. In my case, I tried things in the form of internships, and after I came to Stanford, I also had the opportunity to rotate in different labs and different areas and different professors, their style of doing research. So I would definitely encourage everyone who has a chance to try out some undergrad research while they're still at Roorkee.
And that's also something which Anshika was telling me the other day. So Anshika, how was your experience with undergrad research at Roorkee? And so what things you did, what things you liked, worked, and what things could be better?
I agree with Dheeraj, because in IIT Roorkee we have a huge opportunity. We can go and ask our professor if you are interested, and you can commit some time like that you want to try out stuff, because we professors different fields. Like in the beginning, I was curious about most of the things because biotechnology was new for me, and it was so fascinating, so interesting. I was like, oh, stem cells are cool, nanotechnology is cool. So I wanted to learn new things, and it was completely new from our 11th, 12th preparation. So yeah, so I was in 3 or 4 labs, and just went to professors that I want to try out for 1 month, like what is happening in the lab, and see what people do. Because one thing is you are curious about what is happening at the cellular level, and then when you do, it might not be your expertise. You might be really good at something else, like as Dheeraj pointed out. So yeah, I try to work with in 3 or 4 labs during my bachelor's, and then I try to do an internship in Europe also to see what research culture suits me. And then I liked Europe, and then I came here. So that's why I also encourage trying out different stuff during your bachelor, so that you have at least some idea that what you like. If not, you don't find out that what you like, but at least you can figure out what you don't like at all. At least you have something that you can.
Yeah, and in fact, like, yeah, that another thing which comes up from this is actually we should also think about the other side of this dynamics, right? As student, you might want to work with, you might want to try out multiple fields, and as Anshika and Dheeraj said, you might go and work with different people. At the same time, you should also think about the person on the other side of the dynamics, that is your professor, right? So more often than not, when you say, okay, I want to do XYZ project with you, that person, that professor blocks out that project for you, so that, okay, you are doing that project. And what I feel sometimes could happen is that because of your other engagements, you might not be willing to continue that research, right? But at that point, it's very important to have a transparent dialogue with your professor. And I guess both Anshika and Dheeraj and everyone else would agree with that you need to try out many things at IIT Roorkee, and at the same time have a honest and clear and transparent dialogue with your professor. So this we have been talking a lot about research and so on, but what is also very interesting to know, very good to know, which is something that would come up to all of us, which we also try to answer now, is what happens after you get a PhD, for example. So what are the career options out there? And all of us are early career researchers over here, so this is also a question that we are also thinking about right now. So I would also like to know that view from the panel, and probably we can start with Rahul, and then we can others can also comment on this.
Yeah. So again, as it was said before as well, so PhD really builds you in your subject knowledge. So you do research in a particular subject, but that does not have to reflect, what you do after that. So PhD, you would have lots of options available. So one is obviously academia track, where you go on to do a postdoc and then a professorship, and you go through that. The other one is going to the industry. So a lot of industrial research that happens also needs the skills that you learned during PhD. So the point there is you have to leverage your skills that you gain during PhD. Is not exactly not necessarily only the subject matter, but also the soft skills like critical thinking, or like how to learn something quickly. And so all those skills are basically transferable to anything else. And so there are a lot of cases where people also change their research fields after PhD, and that is completely normal. So in a sense, like PhD you for basically the research life, which can be in any aspect. So a lot of business, for example, also, market research is again like research. So just because you're doing research in science, a lot of those skills are basically transferable. So I would say almost everything be open to you if you kind of then what you will be lacking is the subject knowledge, which you can always gain quickly. And PhD also prepares you in one of the skills where you can actually how to learn things quickly. So yeah.
I would actually kind of like compliment with what Rahul just said, is that, as he was speaking, and I was thinking about lots of people or colleagues that I've known around here, and I can probably, just give examples of few of them. One of my friends was at MIT, did a PhD in ocean engineering, but right now is a hedge fund manager. Not that he did not like it, but it's just that, you have mathematics, which is common in both. One of the folks who was working with the observatory in Antarctica is now writing algorithms for Google. Then there are at the same time a lot of people who were writing the source codes for ANSYS are now working with the consulting. So, one thing that have resonated with all of these is like, I just cherry picked these examples, was that if you think from the point of employability, or if you just think from point of view, what's after PhD, one of the things that is great is that everyone knows that you can learn, right? And you're very adaptive. So they can put you into any context where your skills are available. Yeah, you know, as far as let's say just are concerned, it's always there. If you want to go into academic track, that's perfect. That's always available. You might have to do a couple of postdocs depending upon the field, but there are lots of options in industry, lots of options even in consulting, and you can just do your own startup. And as like earlier was mentioned in a WhatsApp chat, that actually running a lab is very similar to running a startup. It has a lot of commonalities. So it's great, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. Actually,
Can I make a comment here? This is Subra. I'm sorry to interrupt. Maybe I can provide some relevant information. I graduated the PhD many years ago, like 30 years ago, and I've been in industrial research all these years. You will rarely do what you did in your PhD in your career. There are some rare instances where people do that. What you're applying is, as we said, is critical thinking capability. And when you are in an industrial setting, they're going to come to you with problems that have not been solved before. So you cannot open a book or paper and say, okay, so and so has solved this problem, I'm going to solve it. So they're going to come to you with new problems, and you have to put different aspects of research together. Somebody has done A, somebody has done B and C, see how it's relevant to what the industry needs, when in an industrial setting, and solve that problem. And it's, if you enjoy that kind of work, it's very rewarding. So that's kind of what you can expect, when you're in a research career in industry. So,
Yeah.
Can,
that's
can I,
that's es-
can I add something which I have in mind?
yes,
Is
yes, please go on.
and which is what I'm actually applying for my daughter. She's doing PhD, and I'm an entrepreneur. Now, what I would like to say that whether you are in graduation or if you're doing PhD, that means you already have had some kind of a work experience. If since you are IITian, you're one of the best ones, best brains in the country. And I would say try to use ultimately the money is involved, whether you are in academics or you are doing for industrial, whatever, somewhere, somehow the money has to come in. Now, I rather would say that think as an entrepreneur. Particularly, I have had my own experiences of almost 30 years working in the working with Germany and product and all. And typically in Germany, I've not seen in UK and America. In Germany, the people who have done PhDs, they have, many of them have all started their own companies. And if you look at Germany now, the small to medium sized companies, typically say 10 to 50 number of employees, and head of the organization who started that is a PhD person. Now, when you are talking, you can do academia, you can go in academics, or you can go in that. Of course, you can go, no argument. So if you really have interest in academics, then you must do that with the focused mind. What I'm trying to emphasize, don't leave it open. Put your brain into it. Since you are going to the research, you better do your own research. And you figure it out what you're going to do for next 40 years of your life. When you're hanging your shoes on. So if you're clear about it, you may not be 100% clear, but if you're clear what you want, and so you can have easy life as a professor. If you like that, no problem, you can have that. But since you are one of the best brains, why don't you turn the things around? Take a challenge. If you love to have a challenge, then take it, challenge yourself. So when you're going in any PhD, in fact, for my daughter, it was quite interesting. She's doing a research on the icing on the wing of drones, etc. But uh, uh, she has to do take the electives, and some of the electives are she has to do as a student as well. So some of the electives are entrepreneurship, how to start business, how to do finance. So these are the small modules. I said, daughter, you must do this only while you are doing
Yep.
that. That's number one. Number two, while you are doing the research, so whatever the research you're doing, so there is a possibility, because your project will involve many other things as well, another department, another equipment, machine or plant or industry, etc. If you have the previous experiences, then even if it does not relate to your the research, but if there is a possibility, get your hands into it. So you will elevate yourself to a larger level. I'll give you this example. This daughter, she was assisting me in my crane business, and she used to do the programming. She is avionics, aviation and all. She was doing programming for the crane systems, etc. And so she had all that instrumentation and C++ and all that structured text and all programming. which is not there otherwise used. It's a very special thing. And the aviation is a very, very specialized. They have their own software, own thing. But when she went there in this university in Germany, they have a windmill. What is that? The wind tunnel.
Wind tunnel. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and so they are using the, all these universities, typically they buy the equipment and it is a long time before they upgrade it or change it.
Yeah.
Now they have a problem. They want to have a data logger or this logger or that logger, something else also they want to add. But they can't disturb the existing system. They want to have a parallel controlling or monitoring or data recording system. So
Yes.
that's a problem. Now, she is not required to involve into that, but she had been working with me, and I know that she has a capability to program. And I use this quite a lot. I have been doing it in the offshore oil and gas with the old vessels and barges, etc. So I said, daughter, get involved with them. Talk to them. You say, okay, you will give the solution and I'll give you the feedback. This is how you could do it. So this helps. And what I want to say, think as
Yes.
an entrepreneur.
Yes, I agree. I totally agree with you. And so if I may summarize, because as a moderator, I also have to keep an eye on the time.
Agree.
So very interesting stuff. So if I may just summarize it a bit. See, the thing is, whether or not you decide to do a PhD, that's not the end of the story, right? If you want, I mean, you can look for either of the two highs. For example, I always think of it like this: that if you solve something, if you find something new in academics, that also gives you a high, and that's a high like nothing else. I think some of us who are in academics would agree to that. At the same time, these skills are also transferable, and you can also go into like industry and solve their problems. As I think I'm sorry I cannot pronounce your name, but I guess I can pronounce your first name. So Mr. Subra. Yeah. So as you said, right? I mean, these are so there are no textbook answers to your questions, right? I mean, whoever of us we are doing research, we don't have textbook answers, so we always have to find our own answers, and these skills are transferable. So this went on to a very nice discussion, and I hope we can continue this further during the one-to-one mentorship.
I just want to add one more sentence to complete that thought. Just one sentence. Yeah. Now, if you start thinking as an entrepreneur, then you have to do the reverse. For example, in India, the welding or the is not very high tech, and they all depend on the foreign companies, etc. So, but then there is a big requirement of the robotics and artificial intelligence, etc. in the welding. So if you want to do robotics, okay, learn robotics, but thinking in mind, okay, what can in some field. So do a research of a country, of a product, then you can also combine like that. And that would be absolutely fantastic. That's all. Thank you.
I'd like to make one point. I'm aware of the time. I'd like to make one point. Where I've been most successful is when I brought in, some fundamental physics that's been used in some other field into my field and used it to solve a problem. So you have to keep your eyes open, wide open, see what everybody else is doing, and try to bring that in. I'll stop with that because I know you're in time constraint.
Yes, and also like research nowadays is multidisciplinary. So it's not, so if I'm doing a PhD in fluid mechanics, it's not just fluid mechanics that I'm worried about. It's n number of different subjects that I have to think of as well. Okay, keeping it in view of the time, we might extend, let's say 10 minutes by the way, because I think it's almost time now. So because there are a few things which are quite important to discuss, especially from given the panelists that we have now. So there were many questions about the application package. Like when I say application package, it means the things that I need to put into my application booklet when I send my application to universities to apply for PhD or to apply to get a research internships and so on. And some of the questions that come up quite often is that, how should be the portfolio or the entire portfolio, application portfolio? What are the essential things? What are the non-essential things? There are also questions about whether or not GRE and TOEFL scores are important or not. At the same time, that someone also asked, right now in the chat, is how important are good grades? So this whole the entire thing comes in something that I'm going to call as application package. So whenever I say application package from now on, it means this collection of all these things. And I would like to hear Ananya's view first on on what she thinks about like when she was applying for PhD or these things, like what was her experience with it, and what do you think about it essentially?
Yeah. So essentially for me, I have like two application journey. First is for my master's and second is for my PhD. So for my master's, I did my master's in nanotechnology and nanoscience. So it was, I'd say, any application process, if you have a story to sell, you're going to make it. I think it's true for every application process. If you can just make a coherent story of whatever you did in your bachelor's, whatever you did in your master's, and convince the person in front of you, I think you're going to be good. And I think for my master's, it was more generalized. So I did a master's in nanoscience. So it was more like I had to study physics, chemistry, biology, everything in my master's. So for my undergrad, since I did a lot of different projects, it really helped me with that. And for my PhD, I'm especially talking about Europe. I don't know, US people can comment differently. So for Europe, I think it's, for me, what I realized it in my application journey, that here the professors really like to have very specific things from a PhD student, because here in Europe, you already have done a master's and then you apply for a PhD. So they are looking for really specific things. So yeah, that's what.
Yeah. And so if as you bring up the US question, so maybe Dheeraj can comment on that, because Dheeraj he's doing a PhD in Stanford now. So I guess he can share his.
Right. First of all, I would mention that for PhD specifically, research is very important. When you're kind of applying for PhD, you're saying that I'll do research for 4 years or 5 years towards the PhD, right? So they want to see some evidence that you're interested in research and that you have some aptitude for research as well. So for PhD applications, research is very important. Secondly, I'll point out that universities have one of two methods for picking students or doing their admits, which is one method is that they get all these applications, they give it to specific professors who they think, who the students have listed as, being interested with. And the professors are the ones who are actually selecting the students. They look at, they may have interviews, you may have interviews with that specific professor, and from there onwards, it's the professor's decision to whether or not take you into the program. So as you can imagine, in that system, research is very important. Especially, you have to show that the professor's research is of interest to you, and things like GPA and GRE, they're less important when universities adopt that method. The other method that universities have is that they have an admissions committee. So that's a few set of is given the task of picking the students, picking all the PhD students that everyone else that will join multiple labs. So in that setting, specific professors don't get much of a say, and things like GPA, GRE, they become slightly more important. So for example, at Stanford, they have an admissions committee which screens applications and picks students for the entire PhD cohort, not specifically linked to any specific group of professor. Whereas at University of Michigan Mechanical Engineering, you directly get matched to a specific professor and you have interviews with that specific professor. And I think in Europe, again, a lot of times it's like a job interview with specific professors with specific groups, right?
Yeah.
I think Vatsal and others can talk about, if you're interested in a specific university, the admissions process works, can really help you kind of preparing your application for that specific university.
And so what I'm hearing from the panelists is also this, that what I also kind of touched upon when I was presenting is, see, you first have to make a goal that, okay, I want to do a PhD in this field, or I want to do this research work. After that, you do research on what is the process to actually reach there. Right, and that process might involve you clearing the GRE exam, for example, just to take an example, and then you go on and clear it, and so that just becomes like sort of a requirement that you have. But having said that, there are also universities who are now making GRE score non-relevant in during your application process. So what you need to do is to actually find out what works and what does not work for your specific application into a particular university. And that is where I also feel that the IITR alumni, the IITR alumni network can also come in very handy, because you can always find someone who is doing a PhD in some university, and you can always write to them. You can always discuss with them what is the current process of bringing students in for PhD. Okay, what about Akash? Because we heard from Anshika, from Dheeraj. Maybe Akash can also comment on his process, or is it the same as Yes,
Yeah,
then we
it's
can
quite
move on.
similar actually. Unlike Dheeraj's experience, I was kind of interviewed by different like departments, different professors, and then I made a choice of coming here. So right, our department works in a different dynamic. So you already choose your professor. Professor already chooses you before coming here. Apart from that, I guess if you, like Dheeraj said, I will just probably just repeat his words that if you have some undergrad research evidence, irrespective of the field, like because my undergrad was fluid dynamics and management, and here I'm doing like statistics stuff. So that does not matter a lot, but it's just that you have something in your package to show that you demonstrate some sort of rigorousness in your work. And that's, I think, is the primary thing that you should all aim
Yeah.
for during your years here.
Yeah. And so there's another question that often comes up, like, okay, this is the application process, and I urge all the panelists to also go into this process with during the one-to-one mentorship as well. Very frequently, there's also this question about funding, or like about the stipend or the salary that you get while you're a PhD student. And I think there is still some taboo, about like we don't really understand that how much money someone gets, or is it good enough? Is it enough to sustain a life through the 4 or 5 years of PhD? So maybe Rahul, you can take this question. Like, so do you think that the stipend that you receive is enough? And what do you think about funding in general? How easy it is to get a funding, essentially?
Yeah, so I can speak for the US. So typically in the US, when you're admitted to a graduate school, that's typically after bachelor's, you don't need to have a master's. There are two main mechanisms of funding in PhD. One is the TA, which is the teaching assistantship position, or one is the GA, is the research graduate assistant. And so typically what happens is you start off as a TA. So you'll have to teach the undergraduates, take some labs or something, and you work for 20 hours a week and you get paid. The stipend is, I would say, very comfortable for you to lead your basic lifestyle. And so it's actually the job of the university to make sure, it's basically their problem that if they hire you as a PhD student, they have to find funding for you. And I have had very positive experiences, at least at Michigan State University, where people try to they create new TA positions, or they try to somehow gain fellowships. They will work on your part as long as you are in the good standing in the program. It might be slightly different for masters, but again, in the US, you directly go to graduate school. And so typically that will be masters plus the research component. And so it's slightly longer, but you're secured in a sense if you make the long-term commitment that you don't have to worry much about funding. And apart from like TA and GA, there are also numerous endowment fellowships that the universities may have, or external fundings, or sometimes professors can also have their own personal funding. So there are multiple avenues, but I would say if you commit to the PhD thing, funding should usually not be an issue. And it's standard across the country. So
can I make a comment again? Sure. I'm sorry, I'm interrupting again and again. What you want to look for when you're doing a PhD, especially in the US, is summer internships. A lot of companies are interested. That has two benefits. And I did 2 summer internships during my 4 years doing PhD. One is they pay more, so that helps. Second is you get to see the practical aspect of how what is it, and you can actually use that in academic work as well. What you do there, I did in the industry in my academic work that helped me a lot. And the third is you get to see a lot of people, get to know a lot of people. So when you go looking for a job down the road, there are more people you can talk to, and that helps you out quite.
Yeah,
so don't just look at only the TA and RA. Yes, that helps you initially, but look at the internships and other opportunities that you can look for.
Yeah, and so what I keep hearing over and over again is that you will always find opportunities if you want to. So once you are there, you can always look for more and more options. I'm really glad that you are here, Mr. Subra, because Dr. Subra, because you also bring this very nice insights about the industrial research part of this process. It's very good to hear. Yeah, okay, Akash, you were saying something. Sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah, I was just adding actually one line, apart from TA, GA, PA, and other things. My entire PhD has been funded through industry research. So we have like very strong collaboration with industry. So My first year was funded by a Toyota, second was by AO Smith, and past 2 years has been funded by an insurance company. So, it also depends on the professor. It's their responsibility to acquire funding for you. You don't, in the US at least, yeah, I think Ananya and Shika may speak better about Europe, but you don't really have to worry about the funding.
Yeah, I mean, I can ease that question for Europe as well. I mean, Europe also, you have, if you are selected here, you always have funding. You don't have to worry about it. In fact, I can ask this question to Anshika. So Anshika, do you think so it's a very short question. Do you think the stipend or the salary that you get, is it enough to sustain your lifestyle in Stockholm, which is, I think Sweden is one of the most expensive countries in the world. So what do you say about that?
I would say like the PhD money is quite sufficient for us, and we also don't have to worry about funding. It's professor's responsibility. He can get ERC grant, SSF grant, like national grant or Indian grant, and it's not a problem. Like when I was applying in Europe, I saw that of the Europe it's not a problem, but mostly in UK they ask you to like get your own funding, but there are other funding agency where you can apply and they see your application procedure and application, and then you can get the funding from those agencies also. Otherwise, rest of the Europe, I don't think it's a problem, and the money is quite, and especially in Scandinavia, even though the countries are expensive, but the money is also good compared
so essentially your salary or a stipend will increase with the like linearly with the expense, so you don't have to worry about that. So that's essentially that's the crux of this discussion, that you don't have to worry about funding as such. What you need to worry about is to find your passion and to find what kind of research work that you want to do. And coming to that, so we discussed this a bit, that you need to let's say try out many things at IIT Roorkee. You can essentially rotate stuff, and you can work in different labs, work with different professors to find out what interests you, right? And since unfortunately because of the kind of time that we are in right now, like time as in like so I'm talking about the COVID situation right now, that we are not having enough let's say interaction on campus. And so someone actually asked that given the situation right now, how do you think we can we still participate in this undergraduate research, or how can we still contribute to research, or try multiple things out? So any one of the panelists can take this question first, and then I would also probably ask Professor Das to also comment on this as well. But first, maybe we should hear from a panelist. So what do you think about that?
I can go. So basically, I would say like pandemic has been in a way a boon for the research life, because a lot of things that needed in-person presence are no longer required. People have become more flexible to kind of work with you. And that's why there are a lot of things, I mean, except for some experimental work that you do in the lab hands-on, a lot of things, including like data analysis, even for experimental work or even for theoretical work, a lot of that is now possible in a remote setting, which is quite good. And so even if, like, for example, you are an IIT Roorkee student, but not in Roorkee, you could still continue your research collaboration with any professor that you are working with. And so in a sense, I think it has, maybe there are some disadvantages, but overall, I would say it has greatly accelerated the collaborative capabilities that you have.
Okay, so maybe we can, yeah, please, Anshika, yeah.
Yeah, I was saying I want to add on this. For example, it depends from field to field. Most of the fields, it's not a problem, but fields like biotechnology, where you need to have some experimental or wet lab work, it might be a problem. But still, if you want to explore, there are other specific areas also in that field, like bioinformatics. Like we have certain areas where you can work on, even if while you cannot access the labs or you can work remotely. Yeah, you will not have full access to all the research you could have done previously, but yeah, I think it will be better in coming time. But in the meantime, you have something to try on.
Okay, and of course, I mean, yeah. So what I hear also is that you should approach a professor anyway, and then try to figure out like a system that works for both of you, and that would be helpful. So maybe Professor Das can comment on this. Like, how can we make undergraduate research possible right now? I mean, given the situation.
See, actually, pandemic has initially kept us in halting. So, at the beginning, we were actually surprised to react, but now we have learned how to react. So everything is normal now. Obviously, we have to find out some alternate route to do research. At Roorkee campus, we are continuing in a similar way. So if you want to do research, please once again figure out who are the possible host for doing research, online or offline, whatever you would like to do. Meet them, try to talk to them. I do not think that will be a problem. Until unless you are having a common goal or you have some dream to nurture, so you will not be getting the right time and right path for progressing further. And please do not try to think about long term. Whenever you will be stopping to think long term, you will be converting into a researcher. This I believe all the panelists will be also agreeing with me, and those who have already got the doctoral degree, they will be also agreeing with me. So please reach out to your faculty members in campus. I'm sure that definitely they will be helping you. That's all.
Yeah, that was very nice. So thanks for those words. So we are now about to we are about towards the end of this panel now. And okay, so I realized that I kind of undertook sort of a task which now in the hindsight looks a bit difficult to have been achieved, because we were trying to like take up most of the, let's answer as many questions as possible. And I don't think that it was possible to take all your questions. And I think there are still some questions that were asked on the Google form, on the chat box, which are very interesting, and we should actually talk about those later as well. So what I will do is I will ask all the panelists to essentially and try and answer as many questions as they can in a separate document, and we will send that document around as a post seminar package. And we will also update it on the Google group if once we add you there. So I really I urge you to essentially fill that Google form that was sent by Dr. Panesar in the beginning, and just let us know that you are interested to know more about this thing. So with that, I think we can probably, before we end, Dr. Panesar can do you have some?
Yeah, I have. So because we have many more questions than we have time for, and I think they're all very interesting and relevant questions. So I've started a Quora space, which is a question answering forum, and students can post questions there, and we'll answer them there. So I think this one benefit of doing it is then future students also have access to the question and answer stream. So I'll send you instructions, and I would also request the panelists to contribute to that space.